Sir, I have one doubt that when we have inner product of xy, we integrate over interval sum ab xy dt. And as you said that you can have xy over a w, and then that w should be a positive definite.
No, you can define a inner product using an arbitrary weighting function. I will show you example. Yeah, where w is some function, some positive function.
But that why that w must be a positive definite? Why the condition is put?
Yeah, that is because see any function that look at this last see any function that of you take a vector space on which you want to define an inner product. It should, the function that you define as an inner product should satisfy these 4 conditions. Let's, for the time being, let's forget about complex numbers. Let's take only real valued functions. So the first, if you take real valued functions, then the first one is not important, not required. Look at the fourth one, that is very, very important. See, the inner product should define a norm. When you take inner product with itself, it should define a norm. Okay. For it to define a norm, we have to take the weighting function to be a positive function, because norm is always positive or 0. For a 0 vector, the norm is 0. For a non-zero vector, the norm is always a positive number. No, but the positive definite matrix is defined as, see, determinant is non-zero is an algebraic condition, but the definition of positive definite matrix is x transpose wx greater than 0 when x is not equal to 0.
That is true, because that matrix is positive.
No, that is definition of positive definite matrix. A positive definite matrix is defined as
where x is a non-zero vector.
Yes, if x is non-zero, x transpose wx has to be greater than 0. Okay, so just extend that in this case. Okay, if you have inner product of x with itself, okay, integral x w x into w into y. Okay, so if you take x wx, that has to be a positive number. Okay, so see what will happen is x wx, if you take a function, see if I define x y, let's say this is my inner product definition, T goes from A to B, this is my inner product. Okay, now if I put y equal to x, so what is x wx, x comma x, w has to be positive, because when you put x with itself, see this will be xt square, yeah. So now if you take wt dt, if wt is positive function, okay, you are guaranteed that for any x, for any arbitrary x, this is greater than 0 when xt is not null function or 0 function. If it is 0 function, it will be 0, no problem. Okay, but when it is not a 0 function, okay, on any arbitrary x, this should be positive. So that is the criteria. So that's why.
But for 0, the condition is violated.
Which one?
If x equals 0, wt can be anything.
Yeah, but you cannot take one vector and define inner product. No, it should the condition should hold for 0 vector and all vectors x. So that's why w has to be positive. That's why w has to be.
That becomes particular.
Yes. So likewise, when you define, see, when you define x transpose wy as inner product in a finite dimensional space, okay, when you take x transpose wx, okay, this should be greater than 0 if x is not equal to 0 vector. Yeah, this is definition of positive definite matrix. Okay, the definition of positive. So unless this condition is satisfied, we cannot.
Now this weighting function
Ah.
which is going to be there,
Ah.
which is not going to enter the energy into the system.
No, see, many times these weighting functions, I will show you an example of a weighting function. Then many times the weighting functions get defined through some application. Okay, see, in the, if I go to Hermite polynomials, there is a weighting function. See, actually if you look at this Hermite polynomials, well, I have written in a particular way, but see here you look at this function. See, x1t is exponential t square by minus t square by 2. Actually this is the weighting function. This is the weighting function. So I could have taken xt. See, I have defined the inner product in a particular way here. I have taken x1t to be this particular function, x2t to be t times this function, okay, and so on. What I could have done is, which is also a consistent way of, I could have defined this inner product as xt yt equal to minus infinity to infinity e to the power minus t square by 2 okay. So this is my weighting function, this is my weighting function, okay, and then I apply to create these Hermite polynomials. I start with vector x1t is equal to 1, x2t, these are my functions, I am calling them x1, x2, x2t equal to t, x3, these are my vectors which I want to orthogonalize, t square and so on, okay. And then if I want to generate orthogonal functions from x1 between x1 and x2, okay, then this is the weighting function, this is the weighting function. Now you can see that this is a positive weighting function, okay, it is for any t it will be positive function, okay. So now this particular function, I think it arises in solution of some differential equation, or this, it naturally arises, this particular weighting function. In some cases, it follows from some situation that you have to use this weighting function, okay. So then the solution becomes very easy to solve. I think it comes in some, now exactly I don't remember where exactly it arises, but here you could use this is a weighting function, and then applying now Gram-Schmidt to these vectors, that is 1 t square, t cube and so on. If you take those vectors and apply Gram-Schmidt process using this definition of inner product, okay, you will get Hermite polynomials, okay. Then what you get, see, these are the Hermite polynomials, one, of course with reference to this, these are the Hermite polynomials, 1 2t, 2t square minus 4 and so on. So these are the Hermite polynomials, okay. So these are orthogonal polynomials with respect to this inner product definition, but I could have defined inner product, okay, by moving this weighting function here I have moved the weighting function here, okay. You get what I am saying? Yeah. See, this is a way of defining inner product. I could have defined it like this. I could have defined it like this. See, my first, see here my weighting function, here my weighting function is this, right? This is my weighting function, this is my positive weighting function, and I want to orthogonalize these vectors, and here what I have done is, here I have taken weighting function to be 1, here I have taken weighting function to be 1, and first vector I have taken to be this weighting function itself, okay. So either way are consistent. See, it's only that. Okay. So weighting function is many times problem specific. Weighting function would help in so in Legendre polynomials, what is the weighting function?
How the elements H0, H1 they are computed?
How they are?
They are computed.
So now you take see, you just follow this process, no? We just follow this process. Yeah, Gram-Schmidt process. You just follow Gram-Schmidt process. You get. So you take the first vector. I mean, it is C. You take the first vector, divide by norm. You will get the first unit direction. You take the second vector, take inner product with the first unit vector. Okay, and then remove this component. Remove the component from that direction. Then whatever remains, okay, you normalize that. Okay, now you have E1, E2. Then we take the third vector, remove component along E1, remove component along E2. Okay, then normalize that. So you just go on doing these integrals. Okay, so you will get.
This is the process. But now you said inner product also.
So these are inner product. No, I have used inner product here. See, all these are inner products. So this is inner product. See, this is applying. See what I am doing. I am taking this inner product here. This is my inner product. Okay, and I want to orthogonalize functions x1 t equal to 1, x2 t equal to t, x3 t equal to t square. Okay, and this is my inner product definition. So now what is the norm of x1? Norm of x1 is inner product of x1 with x1. Yeah, inner product defines the norm. That is very nice. See, inner product has two properties. One is angle and other is norm. Both it gives you. It's very nice. So you first you find the inner product of x1 with x1 and take its root. That will give you see the basic thing is that inner product of xt with xt is equal to norm xt to norm square. Okay, so if you want the 2 norm to be computed, okay, is equal to simply okay. So we just find first we take xt is equal to 1, okay, then 1 divided by norm of 1, norm of 1 is 1 into 1, yeah, minus 1 to 1, so it is just 2, that is why the square root 2 is coming, because it is norm square is 2, so square root 2 is coming. Now then you take this is your so then you take the second vector t, okay, and take inner product with this. It should have been root 2 here. There is a typo. So then with root 2 you take an inner product, subtract this from the second vector t, okay, and then whatever you get you find its norm and divide. That will give you another vector. So this is the second unit vector, which is orthogonal to the first one, and so on. So you just go on applying. Then you take inner product of this with this, and inner product of x3 with x3 is t square. So take inner product of t square with E1, inner product of t square with E2, and then go ahead like this. Okay. So which one? Legendre polynomials. Legendre polynomials are used in solving boundary value problems between 0 and 1, or if you take minus 1 to 1. See, sometimes you have spherical coordinates and your radius going from minus r to r. Okay, so you can normalize it to minus 1 to 1, or sometimes you have problems along length 0 to 1. So 0 to 1 you don't use Legendre polynomials, you use shifted Legendre polynomials. So shifted Legendre polynomials are constructed using instead of -1 to 1, this is 0 to 1. See, the limits are here, these limits are instead of -1 to 1, it is 0 to 1. What you get is shifted Legendre polynomials. You just follow the same procedure, you will get different set of you get different set of polynomials which are orthogonal over interval 0 to 1, not -1 to 1. See, 0 to 1 many times you have some boundary value problems in which you have some signal going from 0 to wave propagation many times, one dimensional wave propagation. So that is where you can use Legendre polynomials. So in some problems they will naturally appear, they will naturally appear, Legendre polynomials, shifted Legendre polynomials. So solving partial differential equations, boundary value problems, you get these. Okay, so what I want to do in the afternoon is not spend too much time on this. I want to quickly wind this up and then want to talk a little bit about how I conduct the tutorial sessions, particularly the programming tutorials, because this is computing a numerical analysis, doing numerical analysis without actually doing programming is like having a course on swimming which is done on the board. You have to jump into water and you have to solve actually problems using programs. You cannot do it without programming. So just the theory does not make sense beyond a point. So maybe about 10 minutes I will take to complete a few points that I want to make about the structuring of the course. I am not going to present this entire lecture because a recorded form of this lecture is available on the NPTEL notes if you want to listen to the next part. Also all the lectures, all my lectures are available on the, so this was actually a recorded course in the classroom, not in the studio. So at some point NPTEL was open to accepting recorded lectures from the classroom. So this was recorded in the classroom. This is a real, in fact I find it better than the NPTEL course which is in the studio, because there are students in front of me and then we interact and mistakes I make and it is a course on the board, it is not a course using transparencies. So it's taught on the blackboard, if there are any mistakes, there are 40 people to correct my mistakes, I am very happy about that. And also students ask questions and then that improves the course online, because there are doubts which you are trying to teach something and then you don't know whether you are doing it properly or not. Somebody will ask a question and then you are forced to come up with an explanation and then that actually improves the course. So the full lectures, some sections that you may want to see, some that you can go and see there. So just let me just complete this module 3. The next thing I do is, apart from Taylor series, is I am not going to go into details. Then I talk about interpolation. This interpolation polynomial, I think all of you know about interpolation polynomial, that you give some points and then you find a polynomial that passes through all the points. And this concept has been used to develop many numerical schemes. One of the popular numerical scheme is called as orthogonal collocations or collocations method, which is used for solving differential equations, boundary value problems, partial differential equations. So then what I make sure is that examples that I take for finite difference, I continue with those examples when I come to orthogonal collocations. I just take the same examples and show that how to and then there are these finite element methods and so on, which are I am not too sure whether they are popular in the electronics domain, but in many other domains these finite element methods are very widely used. The next important aspect of discretization is least squares. Least squares is very often used for converting a problem into computable forms. So least square approximations, you can develop analytical solutions of least square approximations. least square approximations are very nice geometric interpretations in terms of projections and so on. So again, geometry is very important. You should introduce geometrical concepts. What is the meaning of approximation? So typically approximations involve projecting from some higher dimension to lower dimensions, and that's where you do approximations. And there could be all kinds of approximations, function approximations, polynomial approximations, and then those are used to discretize the problem. So one can even talk about modeling identification problem here, parameter estimation, and so on. So I would just quickly move to the next 3 modules, not going to spend time on this. My next module is on solving Ax equal to b, solving linear algebraic equations, and as you know that this is one of the most used method in engineering, solving linear algebraic equations. So what I tell students is, that look, we have only few tools in our bag, we don't have too many tools. We know how to solve linear algebraic equations. So somehow, hook and crook, we try to convert a problem into solving linear algebraic equations. Okay. So then you can apply your tool. Okay. Likewise, other tool that we have is optimization. Some numerical scheme to optimize something. So try to convert a problem into an optimization problem. Then you can use a standard tool and solve the problem. The third option is convert the problem into a boundary ODE initial value problem. All these Runge-Kutta, Euler method, whatever, Gears method, predictor corrector method, there are many methods. But so you have this limited set of tools and somehow cast the problem into that standard form that can be attacked using these tools. So the example I like to give is from our hospital, doctors in our hospital. Sometimes the students or even others say that, if I go there, I know what the doctor is going to give me. He is going to give me paracetamol, he is going to give me mox, antibiotic. So there are some 3-4 things. So there is another way of looking at it. Look, if 99% of the problems can be solved using 4 pills, what more you want? So we are not worried about those 1% problems which cannot be solved using mox, paracetamol, and some antacid. You can probably count, what anti-allergy. Okay, some 4-5. If you take a cross section, then you might find that only few tablets are being given. But that is the situation we are in. When you are solving a mathematical problem, we have only few tools with us, and somehow we want to fit our problem into that mold. Okay, once it comes into that mold, we solve it, and then we create an approximate solution. Now once you have an approximate solution, then knowing the physics of the problem, your engineer has to come back, and then engineer should look at the solution critically and say whether now the numerical solution, does it make sense? Okay, because that computer cannot tell you. Okay, it will throw numbers. Okay, so whether these numbers, is it a garbage or does it make sense? Now this is where again you have to interpret the results as engineers. So learning objectives here, just one thing I will emphasize before I move forward is here, before we talk about all the numerical schemes like Gaussian elimination, or there are these methods called iterative methods like Gauss-Seidel method, Jacobi method, and so on. There are many methods of solving linear algebraic equations. Okay, before that we do or I do some geometric insights into when does the solution exist. Okay, what is the geometric interpretation of solving a linear equation? So there are different ways of interpreting it. There is a row picture, there is a column picture. The row picture will tell you that you are solving simultaneously set of equations. The column picture will tell you that you are finding out linear combination of columns to find out another column which is on the right hand side, and so on. So if you look at a book by Gilbert Strang, Linear Algebra, you will see all these geometric viewpoints emphasized, which are very, very important, because if you get these geometric ideas clear, then there are some fundamental subspaces of associated with any matrix. Now there is something called row space, column space, null space, and what is the relation of these spaces with the solution. If you talk about these things, then you know when solution exists, when it is solvable, all these things become very, very clear. Well, after that, you know, you get into all kinds of solution techniques, which I don't want to get too much into detail, because these are known to you. This is not something different. The tools are known to you. In a course, I cannot do more than 3 tools. I end up doing Ax equal to b. I end up doing ODE initial value problem and nonlinear algebraic equations, and maybe some little bit of optimization, little bit, not much, because in 4-month course more than this is not possible. So optimization I cannot cover in this course, even though it's an important tool. Maybe some elements I cover, and stochastic, of course, it's a topic in itself, and it's difficult to cover stochastic methods in this one course. This itself becomes very heavy for a postgraduate course. But what do I want to achieve through this? So, which is what I just want to emphasize here, is first thing I want all the students to realize is that most of the problems cannot be solved as they are formulated. There is no analytical solution to most of the problems. Okay, you can only construct approximate solutions. You cannot construct analytical. You cannot know the true solution. That is a myth. That is not possible. You have to convert them into some kind of a computable form, and then you should be able to understand what are the basic properties of the tools that are used. Okay, so what I emphasize in the 3 sections, that is Ax equal to b, ODE initial value problem, I emphasize on deriving these methods rather than giving the algorithms. I derive them from scratch. Okay, so if you know the derivation, you can modify the derivation if you want. So that is the idea. And the third thing is that you should be able to concoct a recipe. Okay, so finally what I want to communicate to the students is that a numerical scheme is a recipe. You know, it's like you have been told, it's like cooking competition. You know, you have been given, make this, these are the ingredients, make something out of it. Okay, so you have to come up with a recipe to do the final product. Okay, you might use Taylor series, you might use interpolation, you might use approximation, it's your choice. Okay, nobody is going to tell you that this is the method. There is nothing like this is the method. Okay, you have to judiciously choose different methods. In, you know, what I would say is that the simple rule is that start with the simplest method. If it doesn't work, go for a more complex method. Okay, and so on. Okay, but you should be able to make this judgment that, you know, now for this problem, well, it's fine to use Euler method. For other problem, well, I cannot use Euler method, I need to use Runge-Kutta method. So these judgments you should be able to make by understanding the basics of how these methods are evolved. Okay, what is the fundamental, what are the basis? If you know that, then you can make these choices, because nowadays you are not expected to write your own code, particularly when you are doing projects, or there are umpteen number of professional, non-professional, public domain softwares available. You can download and use them. Okay, you don't have to actually start from the scratch and write Gaussian elimination today. Okay, you can use MATLAB, you can use Scilab, you can use LinPack, you can use, so many things are available. Scilab is freeware, you know, and the linear algebra solvers in Scilab are same as MATLAB linear algebra Scilab. The basic abilities are same, so you will get, maybe the toolboxes may not be as many as MATLAB, but the basic computing engine is same. So you have to now understand how and why these methods are developed, how to apply them in different contexts. If you have that understanding, then you can concoct a numerical recipe and solve a problem. So you should get confidence to come up with your own recipe for solving the problem. So that is what I expect at the end of the course, that if I give you a problem, there is no unique solution. Two different people can think differently and come up with two different ways of solving the same problem, okay, and both of them can give you good solutions, okay. So that is extremely important, okay. So that is the so this was about the overall course structure. If you have any questions before I proceed to the tutorials, particularly programming tutorials. The other tutorials, I try to mix problems from abstract problems and some engineering problems, which makes it easier for the students to understand the connections. But I want to talk about some things that I have been trying for programming tutorials. So do you have any questions about the overall course structure, or you have any experiences? You may have taught this course, and if you have some experiences to share, then
About
optimization algorithms. I see. Okay, so well, right now I have notes on optimization algorithm, but which are not included in the NPTEL lecture. So we are working on converting these set of notes into a book where we'll actually include optimization algorithms. Optimization algorithms to some extent in my notes I have covered, but only 2 or 3. One is gradient method and conjugate gradient method. So just then necessary and sufficient condition for optimality. So very basics, very few things are covered in these notes what are available online, okay, or what I have given to you. But otherwise right now my lecture notes doesn't have optimization covered. Well, if you are interested, I can send you something that I have. So, but it's not included here. It's there are if you want a good book, maybe S.S. Rao, book by S.S. Rao is a comprehensive, quite good book. Of course, there are many other books like Nocedal and Wright, and or Himmelblau has a book on engineering optimization. So there are many good books available with now optimization again is a very vast topic, and then we have a separate course on optimization. It almost, you can in such a course like this you can only give few lectures on optimization, but optimization needs completely separate course.
You said that we can arrive to a solution for any problem with any of the
Yeah.
Is there any kind of a performance metric, let's say faster computation time or better algorithm, going about one of the algorithms?
Yeah, so that's a good question. See, but what you have asked is actually, I would say it's very application specific and problem specific. So I'll give you an example from electrical domain itself. Let's say I have a model for induction motor, a dynamic model for induction motor. Okay, I want to use it for offline simulation, okay, and I want to use it, let's say, for online control. Okay, let's say I want to develop a Kalman filter or something using that model, and I want to do some offline simulation studies. Okay, in offline simulation studies I don't mind using Runge-Kutta method, because it involves it is very computation intensive. Okay, but since it is offline, it doesn't matter if each computation takes a long time. Okay, then or there are methods which are called in integration algorithms with accuracy monitoring. So what they do is, you give an interval, and within the interval they subdivide, and they keep subdividing till you get certain accuracy. Okay, now this kind of luxury is possible in an offline this thing. When we want to use it for online control, okay, my computations maybe have to be over in, so we were trying to do an extended Kalman filter for induction motor. Okay, my computation should be over in 25 microseconds. Okay, and we realize that if I insist that I should solve this in 25 microseconds, I should solve it. So my sampling time is about 25 microseconds, or say maximum 50 microseconds. Then my computation should be not more than 10 microseconds. I should do computations in 10 microseconds. With the computing power we had, if we had used Runge-Kutta, it is not possible to complete computations in 10 microseconds. So we decided to use Euler method, Euler integration, and with integration interval of 10 microseconds, the model was giving reasonably good results. Induction motor, I mean, it was not so with Runge-Kutta I could even do integrations up to 100 microseconds, large steps I could take, because it is much more accurate even for large steps. If I use Euler, I have to use small steps. Okay, because Euler, the way it is formulated, it has limitations from in approximations. If you understand these, okay, then you can use both. Okay, in one context, if you know that, well, if I reduce the sampling interval, I can use Euler method. Okay, and in the context of online computations, Euler method is more appropriate because it is fast, just one step calculation. Okay, Runge-Kutta means several derivative calculations. Okay, and it becomes computation intensive. Okay, so this balance has to be decided based on an application, and if you know how these methods are derived, okay, so my conjecture is this, that if you know how these methods are derived, okay, so for example in my notes I will just show you this. So what I have shown here is that basically there are two ways of deriving methods for numerical integration. One method is through Taylor series, other method is through interpolation polynomials. Okay, so Taylor series based methods are all these Runge-Kutta methods are all Taylor series based methods. The simplest of Taylor series based method is Euler method. Okay, so now what I have done here is I have started with derivation of Taylor series based methods. Okay, and then shown that first order approximation of Taylor series will give you first order approximation. So derivation of Taylor series. See, one thing is to say that Euler's algorithm is like this. Okay, other thing is to start from the Taylor series. I have introduced Taylor series approximations right in the beginning. So now I am not scared of writing it on the board and doing it. Okay, so now if I do this, okay, then the students realize that the first order method will give me this Taylor series based method. Okay, second order method, Taylor series method is nothing but Runge-Kutta second order. Fourth order Taylor series based method is Runge-Kutta fourth order. So if I take higher and higher derivatives, my accuracy increases, but computations increase. Okay, now if I want to use a lower accuracy method, okay, what I need to understand, which you understand only if you do the derivation, is that if I keep this step size, this h here, if I keep the step size very small, I can use the Euler method also. Okay, so there is nothing like Euler method is bad and Runge-Kutta method is good. In some context you can make, if you understand how to make Euler method work, you can make Euler method work. If you understand how to make Runge-Kutta method work, you can make Runge-Kutta method work, and it is context dependent. So in some context, Euler is good, in some context Runge-Kutta is. So this question is, so what we have to tell the students is that, look, you have to learn to make these judgments, okay, and these judgments are completely problem specific, situation dependent. If you just say problem specific, that is also not correct. See, because if I just say induction motor, can I say induction motor should always be used in inductor? No. When I want to use induction motor model, okay, in the context of online computations, I'm going to use Euler method. It is fast. So sometimes fast is important, sometimes fast is not important, but accuracy is important. So so you should be able to, it is context dependent, and if you know how these algorithms are derived, then you can make the judgment of when to use what, okay, depending upon your situation. And the other thing which I try to emphasize in the class is that, look, because there is no one way of solving the problem, you and me are in the business, okay, otherwise there is no expert required, right? If MATLAB could decide what to do when, or some Scilab or some program could decide, we are not required, okay. So this judgment only we can make, that well, I can use this tool in this context and this tool in that context, another tool in another context, and then there is no panacea, there is no one tablet which solves all the so there are different tablets. You are a doctor and you have to look at the patient, every case is different, you have to create a combination that is suitable for that patient, okay, and that confidence you get if you know inside working, why, how it has been formulated, why this method has come about. Yeah, so shall we proceed to the next part? Okay, now this is okay, so now regarding teaching programming, see, one of the main thing here is how to teach the programming to the students, okay, and these days it's very important that they learn programming, okay. Now they do a programming course typically in C or C++, and then again they are introduced a tool without a context many times. I don't know how it happens, but they don't know where it is going to be used for afterwards. So they learn to do things like they learn for loop, while loop, something, and then they forget about it. They don't, because they have not applied it to a real problem. If you don't apply it to a real problem, then, so when I started teaching this numerical methods course, I started doing it in IIT Madras in 96. So that time first I used to, for many years after that, I used to take first few lectures on the syntax. First I used to teach C, and then later on when MATLAB became abundantly available, I shifted to MATLAB teaching, but first few lectures used to be on syntax of MATLAB, for statement, if statement, while statement, and then give some examples and so on. And then we wouldn't go anywhere for a long time, that the students were very, some people already knew programming, they would be very fast, some people would never pick up programming by this method, okay, and towards till the end of the course also, they will be very bad programmers, they won't be able to program. So then I thought about is there some way out, is there some way we can change this. Then what I realized is that see, teaching all this for loop, if loop, and then while statement, whatever, all those things is like teaching grammar, okay. So when I learned language as a kid, my mother never had grammar classes for me, so I learned by copying others, you pick up grammar, okay, you listen to the sentences in some context, okay, we make out the meaning, we don't have to be, we are not taught meaning of every word that we pick up meaning, we pick up, so we pick up things by observing, and we have this innate ability to pick up the rules by looking at examples, okay. And so I thought, instead of making students go through few lectures of the programming language, okay, and then giving some exercises on how to use print statement, then give some exercise, we wouldn't go anywhere. So what I decided to do was to take some real problem which I want to solve, okay. I have not taught the theory in the class right now. So in my class in the beginning I am doing all these vector spaces and all the abstract theory. At the same time what I would do is, I have taken a problem, say for example solving linear algebraic equations using Newton-Raphson method, okay. Now a student, if I give him algorithm that this is the method by which you solve, okay, then the students can just independently look at the method. The method and the derivation will merge somewhere in the class after some time, okay. In the beginning what I can do is I can solve a specific problem, okay, using Newton-Raphson method, and what I do is I put my code as a demo code online, making it into an image file so that they cannot copy and paste from my code, they have to type it, okay. So what I tell them is that look, you will learn if you type my code, not if you cut and paste my code, okay. So you can even decide to give them handouts, printed handouts of your program, but reading your program, see what I do is I give them a program of how will I solve two equations using Newton-Raphson. This is my Newton-Raphson code which is very well documented. This is how I would write a Newton-Raphson program. This is my function. So I do not make effort to introduce while loop, if loop, everything is there inside. So I have given them a explanation of what is the program, okay, what is the algorithm, okay, and how I would program it using MATLAB, okay. So this has this has a function definition, how a function is defined, okay, then how a call is given to function, how to initialize, okay. So I have put one program in which I have solved a specific problem using Newton-Raphson method. This is my program, and then what I would do is to match this. So what do you need from Newton-Raphson? You need a gradient calculation, okay, Jacobian calculation. Then you need this loop till it converges. You keep iterating, you keep generating a new guess. So what is convergence? Everything gets taught here, okay. They see it happening here, and then with this program, okay, I would give an assignment, okay. So I would show them, I would solve one particular problem, okay, I would solve one particular problem using Newton-Raphson. I will put my codes saying that okay, if you do not want to write your own code, copy my code, doesn't matter, okay. Like we learn language from our parents, we just copy them most of the times in the beginning. After some time we start getting the meaning of what is being said, okay. So just copy my code, okay, and then but then what you do is when you copy my code, don't copy it blindly. If you want to copy my code, you solve these problems. So these are problems picked up from the chemical engineering. This is some reactor steady state problem, this is some thermodynamics problem which they have studied in the other courses, okay. So now the programming assignment is to solve these problems, okay. Then what I tell them is that okay, I have given you this program, okay. So I have given you this program, and here the Jacobian is calculated, analytically. This is analytical. So for a specific equation that I have given you, this is the analytical Jacobian, okay. I am solving some two equations in two unknowns, this is analytical Jacobian. Can you replace this analytical Jacobian by a numerical Jacobian, okay. So in my tutorial problem, okay, so solve these problems using that code, okay. So they learn to copy my programs and learn by imitation, okay. But there I have solved some simple 2 equations in 2 unknowns, now solve 4 equations in 4 unknowns, okay, solve this problem. Or the other thing I ask them to do is, okay, how will you replace analytical computation by numerical computation of Jacobian? Replace the analytical computation by numerical computations, okay. So like this, small tweaks to my code, okay, this is my base code, now tweak it to add numerical Jacobian, okay. Using numerical Jacobian, solve another problem, so solve this problem using numerical Jacobian, okay. So if you give them a program, okay, and I think there are 2 fundamental programs that are needed, one is Newton-Raphson, the other is integration, Euler integration or Runge-Kutta integration or something like that. So if you put your own programs there, then one thing is that they know how to write programs, they know that you should comment. I mean, you don't have to teach them that you should comment. If you write a program in which you have commented, they understand that you should comment. I mean, anyone would try to imitate by putting, so this is some simulation program, dynamic simulation program, okay. So using I think Euler integration. So this is my Euler integration program. So in this I have showed I have plotted certain variables, okay. Then I have stored variables and I have created arrays, okay. So all the concepts, see there are if loops here, there are for loops here, okay. So all these concepts they get taught in the context of solving a particular problem, okay, actually integrating a differential equation which they know, okay. So then I don't have to teach them how to write a for loop. Here is an example, once you have written a for loop, okay, then you understand, in some different context how will you apply it, okay. So one way could be that we as teachers could create nice demo programs, okay, which we just give them and say that take this demo program, but this is written for problem A, now use it to solve problem B or problem C, or tweak it to make it more potent, and try to solve some more complex problems. So if you give them initial programs like this, then in some sense everyone is on the same footing, everyone, if somebody doesn't understand programming, he or she has something to fall back to, okay. If nothing works, I will copy this code, and then what do I have to do? See, this students understand that these 3 equations have to be changed, okay, rest all things will work as they are, okay. So if they start like that, it is fine, okay. And then for submissions, what I do is, this can be done if the group is small, is that no group submissions, no submissions. So we have a lab, I think nowadays many colleges have labs with 40-50 computers. So I just tell them that you will have to solve a programming quiz, okay. Programming quiz is not like unknown problem. I am going to ask you solving Ax equal to B, come prepared. I have given you demo program, you know what the solution is, okay. I will ask you, here I have asked you some reactor problem, there I will ask you some motor problem, that equations will change. You should be able to apply and how to solve it, you have a demo program, okay. So come and solve it there. Now once that happens, okay, everyone, because if you have to write an exam of programming, you should yourself program once at least, okay. So they are forced to program, and or even tutorials, one thing which I have been trying, the other tutorials, the handwritten tutorials. So you discuss the problems in the class like I said, but then suppose this week I discuss the problem, then the next week or sometimes the faculty does it in the same class, is that at the end of the class you have to submit one problem, okay. But one problem means it is random, so each one will get a different problem to submit. Okay, so you are given some, so first 45 minutes you discuss the problems, last 15 minutes you solve one problem and hand it over. Okay, and you will be told that you problem number 3, you problem number 7. So so everyone has to come prepared, at least think and come there. Okay, and you could do it a little later. Okay, you could do it, you discuss the problem today and you have a quiz tomorrow, and in the quiz, so my grading load is reduced because for one student I have to grade only one problem. Okay, now since it is random, okay, everyone has to prepare for every problem, they cannot take risk of, and then you assign some weightage for it if that is permitted in your curriculum to assign weightage for these quizzes. Then you say that this has non-trivial weightage. If you put some, so last time we taught this course for undergraduates, we conducted say 5 such quizzes, okay, and we had kept 20% weightage for this, so which is not small, so they cannot afford to ignore it, so 4 marks for each, but so if you are sincere, and then you know the problems, right, you have been given the problems, any one of them will be asked, so they come prepared for those problems, they are forced to look into, and the copying and multiple copies of the same thing being submitted, that gets reduced, that doesn't happen. At the same time, per student I have to grade only one problem or 2 problems, whatever, small set of problems. So this way it's possible to actually make them work. So if you have given them an example, they have no reason to come and complain. Look at my demo program, I have given you the solution. Okay, now you just have to understand my solution, implement it, and come and do it in the class as an exam. Okay, so that way the learning is much better. Most of them end up programming themselves, and once you do it yourself, once you jump into water, you end up learning. So there is no, so you can definitely try this for for a smaller class, for electives, you can try this technique of, but I would strongly recommend that, particularly for programming, if you put up, see, for the solving problems by the hand solving problems, there are enough books, there are guides, there are all kinds of things where they learn, they can nowadays from the net they download all the solution manuals and try to learn from that, which is fine. Okay, so we learn by looking at others. Okay, so there is nothing wrong at that. Same thing if you do about programming, that means we create demo programs, we give them demo programs and give them questions which need to just tweak the demo program to make it work. Okay, then everyone comes to same level in some way. So people who have a lot of programming experience don't get super advantage over those who don't know programming, because you have given them something to fall back to if they don't know programming, and it seems to work. So this method I have adopted for last say 3-4 years in different courses wherever so the courses that I teach in control systems of course need programming, then numerical methods does need programming, then I teach a course on data analytics that needs programming. So this idea seems to work, that you give them a demo program and ask them problems which are very similar, so that they can learn from the demo programs, and you don't have to take too many programming exams. Even if you take one programming exam, okay, or it's enough. There could be say 4-5 sessions of helping in programming and then one exam in programming. Okay, so no submissions. Okay, no submission. So come solve it in front of me, submit and go. Okay, so that means you have to know it yourself. You cannot. So this method you can try implementing and see if it works. So I think that's all I have to say. We can discuss a few more things that we may have questions or. So in tutorials, if I just show you the tutorials, I'll show you the tutorial problems. Okay. So there are demo programs. I think some typical, if you figure out some 2-3 areas in which you should put demo programs, they are enough. So for example, I asked them that how will you do numerical Jacobian or numerical gradient calculation, and then afterwards I share my program with them that this is how I would do it. So it just some 5-10 lines of code. Just this is my numerical Jacobian method. You perturb a variable, find the function, you perturb the variable in the negative direction, positive direction, and divide. Simple using definition of derivative. You can do approximate derivative calculations. So once they actually apply and learn the programming, and the tutorials are, and when all the abstract mathematics is going on in the class, if you put the computing assignments which are running parallel, if I give the computing assignments which are coming from engineering domain, so in this case I am using problems which are from chemical engineering. You could use equivalent problems from electrical electronics. So problem discretization and forming a solution. So this is a discretization problem which they have to convert a ODE BVP into set of linear algebraic equations and then solve them using linear algebraic equations. So this is a problem which provides a context to the theory that is being taught in the class. Okay, so it's important to give problems which are not. I could have given this problem if the purpose is not, the same purpose is not served if I give this problem as see, if I don't put this C for concentration and whatever P means some number, if I don't put this, okay, then the connection with the engineering problem is lost. If I had just given this problem by saying dy by dz square, y is some variable, okay, then the learning is not same as showing this is a reactor problem and then you solve the reactor problem. So now you are applying your learning about partial or boundary value problem that you have picked up in the course to a real chemical engineering problem. Okay, so all the tutorials, particularly the programming tutorials, are have examples that are real engineering examples. So in fact many cases I revisit the same problem. So I am teaching here solving Ax equal to b, and then I want them to convert this problem, this equation into here it is nonlinear equation solving. I think this is solving nonlinear algebraic equations. So a very similar problem, only this term earlier was dA into c, now it is dA into c square and it becomes nonlinear. And then how do you solve this using Gauss-Seidel method and so on. So they are supposed to solve actual. So this is ordinary differential equation initial value problems. Okay. So again, see, it's important to give the same problem. Now it's the same problem which is as this problem. Okay. In this case the time derivative is 0. In this case the time derivative is 0. In the third problem the time derivative is non-zero. Same problem. Okay. In this context you have to use discretize and use Euler method, Runge-Kutta method. Okay. In this context same problem. Okay. You have to use Newton-Raphson method. Okay. Because the context is different. Here you have to solve it for steady state conditions. Here you have to solve the same problem for unsteady state conditions. Okay. So if you can integrate the tutorials like this, okay, if so So this is what I mean by a theme problem, even for tutorials. You give one theme problem for tutorials where different aspects of that problem are studied in different contexts, okay, and then that helps the improving the understanding of the problem. So here once you discretize this PD here, you will get ODE initial value problem, and then they are supposed to solve using implicit Euler method, explicit Euler method, whatever. So and then how to solve, how to integrate a differential equation, okay, numerically. I have already given them my demo program. I have taken the demo program and then shown them how will I write Euler integration, okay. So if you don't understand, copy my program, okay, tweak my program. So this way is faster than starting with if loop, for loop, you will never go anywhere, okay. So I mean, this is a matter of debate, what is better, whether we do pedagogically correct things, or so many times the books are written with abstract in the first and then application to real problems later, okay. This way of teaching programming is you start with an application, okay, and just ask this question to yourself: how did you learn language, okay, or how do you learn language? See, when I was faculty in Chennai, my wife learned Tamil faster because she had to talk to the housemaid every day in Tamil, she had no option. I had bought a book on Tamil in 30 days. I was there for 6 years. I didn't pick even one sentence, because you can't learn it by learning grammar. You have to use it. And she had to solve problems. Why didn't you come yesterday? Or why this particular cloth is not washed properly? So those practical problems she had to solve by talking to her every day, and that is where you learn the language, not by Tamil in 30 days, not possible, okay. So what your bike can teach you in 2 days, book cannot teach you because you are applying it in a real problem, it's context dependent. So I think that as a method works even in engineering teaching. Why just apply it? So if you can blend it with our tutorials, then it becomes very effective. It becomes quite. So that's my another practical experience about. So I thought of sharing this part because this is somewhat different than being pedagogic and starting from the grammar first and then. So I'll show you some things that earlier I used to do. See, this is a rubbing demo from earlier days where I used to first teach what is MATLAB, okay. So first I will give them an example of if loop, how if loop is done, then how to do a print statement, how a for loop is done, some example, and plotting, but this way you don't go anywhere, okay. You say that I want to solve this particular problem, which you will solve in your otherwise in your other courses, okay. How will you solve this problem? Using the methods that you are being taught, do that directly, okay. Then it's easier to pick up, why you are studying all this. This way learning language and then using it doesn't work, okay. So best thing is we imitate and we look from examples. So it's good to write nice demo programs and then circulate them among the students so that they can learn through examples, okay. So I'll be happy to answer any questions. I have nothing more to share today. Now more things, you can visit this web page, and all the lecture notes, all these detailed things which I have been flashing, the are available here. So there are almost 300 pages of lecture notes which you can download from this website. So the web course is all set of lecture notes, and even in the video course I have put the lecture notes, and then there are 49 lectures, and any specific topic you are interested in, you can always watch the video. And this particular PPT file, I have shared this with you, and also all my tutorial programs, all my notes, everything is there in the, is it that it's been put on the net and you are supposed to download? On, it's also given, okay, yeah. And video lectures, in case you find it difficult to download from the net because of the net speed, it's possible to approach CDEEP and ask them, request them to copy. They have some service, some 500 rupees or 300 rupees. They'll transfer. You give your media, you give your hard disk or something. They will copy all the lectures and give. So likewise, even other lectures, I think they have some scheme of transferring the lectures at some. So you could do it for your college. You can get it on the hard disk. You can get them transferred. And so if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. If you have any other comments, questions. So do you think, have you been teaching this course in your departments, numerical analysis? So I think it's if simulations are important, you should be teaching this course, particularly to the postgraduates. It's important to teach this course. Also, maybe you may not be interested in the numerical methods, but the some parts that I am talking about, vector spaces, I think you should teach them irrespective of whether you are teaching numerical methods or analytical methods. In chemical engineering department, we teach two courses for postgraduates. One is called as numerical methods, other is called analytical methods. Foundation needed for both the courses is vector spaces. Okay, if you understand vector spaces, then how the methods are developed becomes very easy to understand afterwards. You should know what is a vector space, what is a norm of a vector, what is inner product, how is angle defined, and what is orthogonality. Orthogonality is such a central idea in entire engineering mathematics that it should be taught very formally in the beginning. Then everything becomes, you eat a live toad early in the morning, the day is very good after that. Okay, so that's the saying in English, right? So vector spaces is like a live toad. You eat it in the morning, afterwards nothing is difficult. You understand everything, why things are being done the way they are being done. Okay, so that is, so a takeaway need not be the numerical methods for you, but takeaway could be that if some of these fundamentals are taught in the beginning, and if you continuously make an effort to connect engineering applications with the abstract maths that you are going to teach, okay, then it helps assimilation of ideas in many ways than just teaching the tools and then saying that these tools can now be applied like this. Start with the motivation, which are applications, then go to tools, come back to the same applications again, okay, and show them that how will you solve them. Okay, so if you do this cycle, then it's quite effective. Then that's what I found over the years, that you start with real engineering applications, apply it to, then create a need to develop tools for them, develop the tools and apply and solve the same problems that you talked in the beginning. Okay, that's very, very important. Okay, so then the loop is complete. Okay, that you first say why this is needed, what needs to be done, then do the tools and apply tools to show that that it is applicable. Otherwise, the students end up just passing the course, and after 2 days you ask them where and why this was used, they have no clue. So are there any other questions, any comments, any? Okay, if not, thank you for patiently listening to my lectures.